Okay, so like the most hilarious thing just happened to me. I recorded this whole video already and didn't realize that I had it on mute. Like, not mute, like I could still be heard. But I had my volume turned all the way down here and didn't realize that it was recording my voice along with some Blooket music in the background. So I'm going to have to re-record this without the Blooket music going along with our notes. Gracious sakes. Okay, so you should have your piece of construction paper. You should have some notes that look like this. And the way we're going to cut this out is the title, this funky shape here, the large rectangle, and then two smaller rectangles. So if you need to go ahead and pause it, go ahead and do so you can get those cut out. And when you're ready to continue, then press play. Just cut them out. I'll tell you how to fold that funky one. Okay, so to fold this and paste it down so that it looks like this. Go ahead and paste the title if you haven't done so. But to fold this, you're going to flip it over, and I know yours is blank here, so just ignore what that mine has designs and stuff all over it. But the purpose of this is to get these two sides to meet up kind of like a pocketbook so that they meet up right here. Let me show that one more time. So your side is blank right here. And then you bring these two bubble things down so they kind of lock like a little pocketbook does. So they lock together. And then once you got them locked together, you can crease it down. Okay, that was a really poor job. I did much better the first time around. Okay, so now it looks like a cute little pocketbook that you can open up. All right, and then you're going to glue on the opposite side of the locks of the pocketbook and then paste it down so that it'll look like this. Okay, the large rectangle will go in first, but let's worry about the outside first. Okay. All right. So this is called the coercive acts, also known as the intolerable acts. If you have not written this down, go ahead and do so. The reason it has two different names is because the colonists called it the intolerable acts, but the British, who passed the law, called it the coercive acts. Now remember, act is a fancy word for law when we're talking about social studies and history. Okay. So coercive and intolerable have similar meanings, but they have different connotations. There's different emotions associated with these words. So let's start with intolerable. So what you're going to do is you're just going to write on the flap what intolerable means. Intolerable means not tolerable, right? Here's tolerable. Able to tolerate. That prefix in means not able to tolerate. So it's not tolerable. Unbearable, unendurable. Think of intolerable almost being to the point where you just can't live with it. You just can't live with things like that. That's intolerable. All right, coercive. It's going to go on the bottom flap. What does coercive mean? Coercive means related to or using force. Related to force, using force. Coercive means that you're being forced to do it. To coerce is to force. It doesn't have to be physical. Like, for example, someone could physically force you to go through a doorway. They could push you. But it doesn't have to just be physical. It can be other ways, like you're in a situation and you feel like you have no other choice but to do this one thing. That's coercive. All right. So now you should have it looking like this, little pocketbook with the two little flaps, as adorable as that is. We're going to open up the pocketbook and we're going to start with the big rectangle, which you should paste right in the middle. How am I going to show this without showing you everything? Gracious sakes. All right, so let's start with that large rectangle. I'm afraid some of y'all will work ahead. The coercive acts were meant to punish the colonists in Boston. So this was right after the Boston Tea Party. And the British were not happy about all that tea getting dumped into the harbor. And so they came up with the coercive acts, and it was meant to punish the colonists in Boston for the Boston Tea Party. These acts did three main things. Number one is they closed the Boston harbor altogether. Shut it down. Completely closed it. It's not good for Boston to have its harbor closed. 2, banned town meetings. So the British didn't want the colonists getting together and making plans for something else like the Boston Tea Party. They didn't want a meeting, and they'd be breaking the law if they were getting together, meeting and making plans that the British did not approve of. And the third thing it did is it sent over more British soldiers. So the British were feeling the what word do I want to use? They were feeling the squeeze on this. They were feeling like war could be happening, that the colonies were getting so rebellious and so out of control that they needed to send more soldiers over to at least get them under control or prepare in case something else like war or something happened. Okay. Now let's get into why the British and the colonists called it two separate names. These acts were called coercive by the British, intolerable by the colonists. Let's start with the colonists. The colonists called the laws the intolerable acts. And we'll paste that right under the intolerable flap. Well, the colonists called it intolerable because they believed the punishments were too harsh. And they basically couldn't live under these laws. They felt like they had to step up and do something because it couldn't stay this way. You just can't live under it. Meanwhile, the British called them the coercive acts. Why do you think the British called the laws the coercive acts? Because they wanted to force the colonists to obey the laws. And in their minds, this was the logical thing to do, is to obey the laws and to not cause all that mischief. So they were letting the Bostonians know that you are going to obey the law. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So that's why they called it the coercive acts. Definitely intolerable is a more negative connotation because, like I said, it means you cannot tolerate it. You just cannot function or live under these conditions. So it's definitely having the more negative connotation. All right, hopefully there's no crazy background music this time around. Okay. So, earlier in this video, I told you that I had already recorded this video once. Why did I have to record it a second time? Write that explanation for me down here towards the bottom or towards the top, depending on where you paste it. Just find a space that has some room and tell me why Miss Brinson had to record this video twice, because she wasn't too happy about that, but otherwise, it would have been a strange social studies video, to say the least. Okay, make sure your names are on these, put them in the basket, and that's all the notes for today.